Nobody saw this coming. Just when everyone thought Kolbe's role inside the Springbok setup was untouchable, new signals from inside the camp suggest something has shifted, and it's not small. Right now, the Springboks are in a delicate transition phase. The core of World Cup winners is still there, but the pressure to evolve tactically has never been higher. Rassie Erasmus is clearly preparing the team for what comes next, and when Rassie prepares, someone always feels the impact. This time, the spotlight has quietly moved toward Colby. Let's be very clear from the start. This is not a rumor without substance. Multiple recent decisions, patterns in squad rotation, and tactical experiments point to a reality fans are only starting to notice now. Colby is still a superstar, still one of the most dangerous players in world rugby, but his role is no longer being treated as automatic. Over the last matches and training windows, the Springboks game model has subtly changed. There is a heavier focus on aerial dominance, territorial pressure, and physical edge on the wings. This doesn't mean speed and magic are gone, but it does mean that pure flair alone is no longer enough. And that's exactly where the conversation around Colby becomes uncomfortable. Inside the coaching staff, the question being asked isn't, is Colby good enough? Everyone knows the answer to that. The real question is, does Colby still fit perfectly into the version of the Springboks Rassie is building right now? That question alone explains why fans suddenly feel tension, even if nothing has been officially said. Before we go any further, here's something important. If you support the Springboks and you want real insight, not recycled headlines, this is exactly why you should subscribe right now. This channel doesn't wait for announcements. It explains the moves before they explode. And trust me, what's coming later in this video is the reason thousands of fans will wish they stayed until the end. Back to Colby. Statistically, nothing looks wrong. His work rate is still high, his attacking efficiency remains elite, and defenders still fear him. But rugby decisions at this level are no longer about stats alone. They're about balance, structure, and what you give away defensively. Colby's size, which once made him an advantage through agility and unpredictability, is now being weighed differently in high-pressure matches against teams like Ireland, France, and New Zealand. These teams are targeting edges more aggressively than ever. And Rassie sees that before anyone else. That's why recent selections, positional experiments, and even bench compositions matter more than fans realize. They are signals, not accidents. And here's the concrete part many viewers say they don't get enough of, so let's be direct. Colby is not being dropped, but his role is being questioned, tested, and potentially reshaped. And that only happens when a coach is considering big tactical evolution. This is not panic. This is preparation. What happens next will determine whether Colby adapts into an even more dangerous weapon, or whether the Springboks start redefining how they hurt opponents out wide. And the most shocking part? The real reason behind this shift has nothing to do with Colby alone. It's about a decision Rassie Erasmus made behind closed doors, involving the team's future shape. That's where things truly get explosive. Stay with me, because what comes next explains why this moment could change Colby's Springboks legacy forever. What Colby represents right now inside the Springboks goes far beyond speed, highlights, or social media clips. At this exact moment, Colby has quietly become one of the most strategically sensitive players in Rassie Erasmus' entire setup. And that's where things start to get uncomfortable. Here's the concrete reality. Colby is no longer judged only by what he does with the ball in open space. In the current Springbok system, he's being evaluated on defensive positioning, aerial contests, kick chase discipline, and tactical obedience. That's a major shift, and it explains why recent decisions around him have sparked so much debate behind the scenes. Several analysts close to the Springbok environment have pointed out something very specific. Colby's role is being subtly redefined. Not removed. Not downgraded. But reshaped. And that reshaping creates tension, because Colby is a game-breaker who thrives on freedom, while the current Springbok blueprint demands absolute structure. This is where fans started noticing the signs. Fewer touches in certain matches. Less license to roam. More responsibility without the ball. These aren't coincidences. They're signals. Signals that Rassie is testing whether Colby can dominate within a system, not just explode outside of it. Inside the group, this has created mixed reactions. Some players see Colby as untouchable, the man who can change a match in one moment. Others understand that no one, absolutely no one, is bigger than the plan. And Rassie Erasmus has built his legacy on that exact principle. Media reaction hasn't helped either. Headlines questioning whether Colby is underused or restricted have only amplified the noise. But what most outlets miss is the real issue. This isn't about form. It's about fit. And fit is everything at the elite level. Here's the uncomfortable truth that few are willing to say out loud. If Colby fully adapts to this evolved role, he becomes even more dangerous. Not just flashy, but indispensable. If he doesn't, the Springboks still have alternatives that fit the system more naturally, even if they don't have his star power. And that's exactly why this situation matters so much more than people think. If you're still watching at this point, you're already ahead of most fans. Because this is where the real Springbok conversations happen. This channel doesn't just react to headlines. It explains what they actually mean. That's why subscribing isn't about supporting a channel. It's about not missing the real story when it breaks. Because what comes next connects Colby directly to a much bigger move from Rassie Erasmus. And that's where everything escalates. What makes this moment even more intense is that Colby is no longer just a spectacular winger. He has quietly become one of the most strategic pieces in Rassie Erasmus' evolving plan. And this is where things get uncomfortable for a lot of people inside South African rugby. In recent months, Colby hasn't been discussed only for his speed or footwork, but for where and how he's being used. Subtle positional shifts, different training roles, tactical conversations that usually involve senior leaders only. These are not coincidences. They are signals. Sources close to the camp suggest that Rassie is testing a version of the Springboks that relies less on predictable structures and more on instinctive chaos, and Colby is at the center of that idea. His ability to create something out of nothing is being treated as a weapon, not a luxury. That changes everything. But here's the concrete part fans have been asking for. This approach forces sacrifices. If Colby becomes the trigger for broken play rugby, someone else has to give up control. Someone loses guaranteed minutes. Someone loses tactical priority. And that's where tension starts to grow behind closed doors. Not everyone benefits from a Colby-centered system. Some players thrive in structure. Others need repetition and set patterns. Colby breaks those patterns. And when a coach like Rassie leans into that, it sends a very clear internal message. Adaptability is no longer optional. Media insiders have already picked up on this shift. Analysts are divided. Some believe this is genius, a way to stay ahead of Ireland, France, and the All Blacks. Others think it's a dangerous gamble that could destabilize the balance that won 2 World Cups. And the players? They're watching closely. Because when a coach starts building ideas around one player's unpredictability, it changes hierarchies without ever making an announcement. Before we go any further, this is exactly why you should subscribe now, not later. This channel doesn't just repeat headlines. We connect the dots others ignore. If you want to understand what's really happening inside the Springboks before it explodes publicly, you're in the right place. Now here's the question that's dividing fans right now, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments. Is Rassie Erasmus making the Springboks more dangerous? Or is he risking too much by reshaping the system around Colby? Because what comes next could redefine roles, careers, and the future identity of South African rugby. And the next part of this story? That's where things get truly uncomfortable. What makes this moment even more dangerous for Colby is that the pressure is no longer theoretical. It's real, visible, and already unfolding behind the scenes. For the first time in years, Colby is not just competing for a spot. He's competing against a shift in philosophy. And that's far more threatening than any single player. Inside the Springbok setup, the conversation has quietly changed. It's no longer just about individual brilliance or highlight moments. The focus has turned towards system dominance, defensive stability, aerial control, and physical presence on the edges. That doesn't mean Colby isn't valued, but it does mean his margin for error has disappeared. One missed tackle. One poor positioning decision. One game where he doesn't touch the ball enough. And suddenly, questions start multiplying. What's alarming is that alternatives are no longer projects. They are match-ready. Players who don't have Colby's magic, but offer size, kicking reach, defensive reliability, and tactical obedience. In Rassie Erasmus' world, that matters. Especially when planning for opponents like Ireland and France, where aerial battles and defensive discipline decide matches more than flair. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Colby's greatest strength, his freedom, is also his greatest risk in this new phase. When he plays instinctively, he creates miracles. But when the system demands strict structure, positional discipline, and conservative decision-making, that same freedom can look like vulnerability. Rassie knows this. The coaching staff knows this. And Colby knows this too. That's why recent internal sessions have reportedly been different. More scrutiny. More video reviews. More emphasis on what happens without the ball. This isn't coincidence. It's a message. At the same time, Colby remains one of the most marketable and emotionally powerful players in South African rugby. Dropping him outright would be seismic. So instead, pressure is applied subtly. Reduced tactical priority. Fewer design touches. More responsibility defensively. It's not punishment. It's a test. And here's the critical part most fans are missing. This isn't about replacing Colby. It's about reshaping him. Rassie has done this before. With veterans. With legends. With players who thought their status protected them. No one is immune. That's why this moment matters more than any team announcement. Because what happens next will reveal whether Colby adapts, or whether the Springboks move on without building around him. If you're still watching right now, this is exactly why you should subscribe, because this channel doesn't stop at surface-level headlines. We connect the dots others avoid, and what's coming next will explain why this decision could define the Springboks' entire backline for years. And now comes the most uncomfortable question of all, the one nobody inside SA Rugby wants to say out loud. What if Rassie is already preparing for a Springboks future where Colby is no longer the centerpiece? That's where everything truly changes.